Greetings, everybody. This is the Psychology of Human Relationships, and we are going to look at self-esteem. It's a relatively short video, and that's because I want you to think about what we talk about in this particular video of about 3.5 minutes or so. So we're going to talk now about self-esteem. It's not what most people think it is. It involves several component parts. The first of which is what makes you a whole person. What are the parts of that? The first part is your physical self, the outside of you plus the inside of you. The things that are mostly not conscious or available for your direct inspection, the interior part of you, what your biology does. And then also the more familiar part of you, the exterior of you, what you look like and what you can do physically. Okay? So that's one part. Next part is the cognitive part, the thinking part of you, how you think, logically, systemically, the way in which you use memory and language and those sorts of things. Okay? And then we have the emotional part, and the emotional part is what I call your emotional signature. This is what emotions you readily express versus those you are a bit less likely to readily express, and how you do those things, you both verbally and non-verbally. That's your emotional signature. And then lastly, your spiritual self, which is the way that you connect to things that are bigger than you. Could be a cause, a philosophy, it could be a set of religious beliefs, it could be the way you participate in large organizations that are charity in nature, or just the way you figure into the big picture, okay? All right. So self-esteem involves each of those four things in combination, and they are dynamically related, obviously. Your cognitive and emotional and spiritual self are all connected to physical, and there are lots of ways to describe how they are dynamically related, but simply remember that they are. And so you view yourself along each of those four dimensions. And you have a real self, which is the way you view yourself in each of those four ways, hopefully without major distortions. Okay? And then you also have an ideal self, the way you view yourself in each of those four dimensions in ways that you would like to become, to move beyond the real self, to have some goals for yourself, desirable goals, okay? How you would like to be, that's the ideal self. And so if we're talking about what we say is high self-esteem, what we're talking about is someone who has a real self-image that's accurate without major distortions, either too high or too low. Too high would be a narcissistic trend. Too low would be big distortions on the low end, and that would signal some real dents in self-esteem, and that either one of those would create low self-esteem. But high self-esteem, accurate self-image without major distortion. We all have distortions. Hopefully they're not major. And the ideal self that you have contains desirable possible goals. In other words, there aren't other people who want these goals for you. You want them for yourselves, and they're possible given your circumstances. Okay? And the last part of high self-esteem is that you're taking steps to reach them. Okay? So here's some rules of thumb. You can be high in self-esteem in some areas or most areas, or lower in some, or vice versa. It's very rare to have high self-esteem in all areas, at all times, everywhere. No. There is nobody like that. And there isn't anybody who has low self-esteem in all areas, in all situations, at the same moment. That's not usual. Even people who have, say, depression, where the real self-image is suppressed, they see themselves as less than they really are, so the distortions go way up. So you'd predict, therefore, they're automatically going to have lower self-esteem, right? Okay. And that's created by the depression. But they're going to have some areas maybe one, two, three, I don't know how many, but they're doing okay. They may still like to read or listen to music. Now, in some cases, of course, people with severe, if not worse than severe depression, extreme, they may be all but shut down completely, and that's really a biological thing more than anything else. But it's rare to have low self-esteem in all areas, all situations, at all time. That's rare. All right. Now, the normal person has doubts about their competence at times. We usually, the normal folks, I'll say I'm normal, but you don't know. I'll say I'm normal. Usually acts wisely, but sometimes foolishly. We hope the foolish parts aren't huge. Behavior isn't always consistent. We are sometimes inconsistent in our behavior. As we age, we usually get better in our feelings about ourselves and our consistency in our behavior. We usually act a little wiser. That's pretty typical. Now, what are some of the major causes of low self-esteem in this way? What are the biggest problems in creating a suppressed, reduced, real self-image? Okay? One of those is overly critical parenting, where parents find fault with us all the time. It's very unbalanced, critical feedback. Another one is significant childhood losses, death of a parent, for example, or even a beloved pet, depending on age and temperament and so on. Any parental abuse, neglect, or rejection. Parental alcoholism and drug addiction. You can see the pattern here. Because early on, we form an emotional template for the way we see ourselves and our place in the world. There's no question about that. And then lack of consequences, either for positive or negative behavior. Those are the causes of low self-esteem. And so when you pick up the next video, we'll talk about the biggest enemies to high self-esteem.